Hello, EDEL 530. This is Michelle Vitoni, and I'm going to be presenting the Fryer and Valdez 2017 article. Dual language education is a growing form of bilingual education. The programs aim to foster academic achievement, bilingualism, biliteracy, and biculturalism. And even with the increase, even with this increase, there remains very limited research on how cultural goals of dual language education are implemented. Though there are cultural goals surrounding, positive intercultural relations, they're inadequate for language minoritized students. These students should be focusing on how to navigate through different socio-cultural environments, such as their primary culture and the dominant culture that often reflects more power. Because of this, it's often questioned if these programs are truly embracing a bicultural orientation. Often, dual language programs mistakenly presume that contact between language majority and language minoritized students is enough to create positive attitudes and behaviors without any issues of power. There's a major gap in research around dual language education and culturally relevant pedagogy. So the purpose of this study is to provide a better understanding of the barriers that can hamper dual language teachers' efforts to teach in culturally relevant ways. The researchers focused on this question. What do dual language teachers perceive to be the barriers of implementing culturally relevant pedagogy in their classrooms? This is a qualitative study, and it was conducted at Howard Elementary School, which is a pseudonym, and that's an urban pre-K through 6 school in the state of Utah during the 2012-2013 school year. Utah had become known nationally for its state-sponsored dual language education initiative that created a state centralized dual language program model implemented in over 100 schools. So this particular school is a Title I school that has enrolled a high number of Latinos at 71%, as well as EL students, 48%, and was located in a low-income, predominantly Latino neighborhood. The researchers worked with 8 dual language teachers, 3 of which identified themselves as Latinas that were born and raised in the one that was born and raised in the United States, and 2 that were born in Latin America. All 3 of the Latinas were bilingual, fluent in Spanish and English. There were also 5 other dual language teachers that participated that identified as white, and were all born and raised in the United States. 3 of them were bilingual in English and Spanish, and the other 2 were monolingual English speakers. The data collection focused on conducting informal, individual, and group conversations and gathering written documents related to their CRP beliefs and practices, which included questionnaires, teaching rubrics, and KWL charts. These efforts were conducted as part of a larger dual language teacher program. The researchers engaged the teachers in individual informal conversations in order to build trust and to receive information on their background and establish their CRP beliefs and practices at the current time. When they were engaged in group discussions, the researchers focused more on a central component of their study, which was a collaborative professional development effort within the school. And through this group, they would be able to share ideas, develop understandings about culturally relevant pedagogy, and the barriers that prevented them from utilizing this pedagogy inside of their classroom. The researchers found that there were 4 primary barriers being identified through the conversations with the teachers. They identified a lack of time, a lack of culturally relevant materials, a lack of knowledge, and the belief that social justice topics were inappropriate for young children. These barriers were making it so that the teachers were unable to put culturally relevant pedagogy in their classroom. For the lack of time, the teachers talked about a wide range of things, such as teaching ELs, implementing technology in teaching, and participating in collaborative action research projects. So it really spanned several subjects, this idea of a lack of time. There were also some contextual factors that were identified by teachers as contributing to their perception of the lack of time. And that included the structure of the DL program, the heavy translation needs in dual language, and culturally relevant pedagogy, instructional planning, and implementation constraints. As for the lack of culturally relevant materials, they talked about how their school had limited context within the school limited content within the school library, a lack of availability of materials in Spanish, limited representation of people of color in materials, and a lack of cultural authenticity within the materials. For lack of knowledge, they talked about how they under-participated in their teacher education program, and so they were unfamiliar with culturally relevant materials and had difficulty finding cultural connections in the content areas like math and science. There was no knowledge of how to manage socio-political issues, no background knowledge of students' cultures, and lack of Spanish linguistic knowledge. And the final finding, that the belief that social justice topics were inappropriate for young children, they found factors, the factors were that the belief that these factors, so they believed that children do not have the cognitive understanding to grasp social justice concepts, that children could be emotionally hurt by the discussion of these topics, and that developmentally appropriate approaches were not possible with culturally relevant pedagogy. In conclusion, one way in which equality efforts in dual language programs, dual language classroom curriculum can be advanced is by developing teachers' understanding and implementation of all tenets of CRP and their students, particularly for language minoritized students. Teachers' insights on barriers of CRP implementation can really inform teacher educators, researchers, professional development facilitators, and others involved in the development of more socially just forms of dual language education. And we really need to recognize that dual language teachers cannot do this alone. Teachers still need to work with all members of the school community towards meeting the bicultural goal of dual language education. The researchers offered several implications for teachers. This included engaging all students and families as valuable resources and partners in providing culturally relevant pedagogy in dual language classrooms. It also talked about engaging with school university community partnerships and to bring universities and community resources to support dual language educators in the effort to teach in culturally relevant ways. They also suggested that teacher educators and districts need to train dual language teachers on a variety of issues that provide the foundation of implementing CRP in a dual language classroom. That schools need to find and create culturally authentic materials in the target language. And they need to specifically help pre-service and in-service teachers examine their privilege and biases.